Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Kai with Ludus Ferocia. We're not reviewing a European style sword today. Today we're checking out something special from Akado Armory. Let's go. Do you practice the Japanese sword and you're stuck using wooden swords? Well, Akado Armory has come out with the tool for you. If you guys didn't know, I operate in a very unique space where I get to teach both traditional Japanese Kenjutsu and European longsword and Langmesser. So I get to kind of see the best of both worlds. If you ever wanted to feel what it's like to actually fight like a samurai, check this thing out. This is the Akado Armory Sparring Steel Katana, and it operates very similarly to modern HEMA fetters. Squire, sword! Just like this one. This sword is dull. It has a ton of flex in it. It's very safe to use so long as you're wearing modern armor like this. Steel fetters have been used for hundreds of years safely and with proper armor. And modern HEMA practitioners still use them for competitions to this day. So why haven't the Japanese martial artists followed suit? Thank you. Now in Japanese swordsmanship, there are three styles that people typically train in. There is Kenjutsu, the original sword discipline from Japan. There is Iaito, which is the art of drawing and cutting. And then there is, of course, Kendo, which is more of like the Olympic sport of sword fighting. And all of them have their own histories and their own traditions, but they ultimately revolve around fighting with the katana. So a Japanese sword practitioner typically uses a full gambit of equipment to train with. They're going to have a bokken, a shinai, and a Iaito, and a shinken as their four main tools of training. So why is that so important? Why do we need to switch over from bokken and shinai to something like this? Well, you kind of have to ask yourself, did you get into Japanese sword fighting because you wanted to be stuck in a tradition of martial practice, or did you want to learn how to use a katana and fight other people? Both answers are totally legitimate, totally fine. There's different reasons to join martial arts. I originally wanted to learn Kenjutsu because I want to learn how to use a katana against other people. There are many people who use martial arts as a meditative practice, as a practice of discipline, and just something that is meant to enrich their lives. But if I can get closer to using what was actually used on the battlefield without hurting my friends and my training partners, I'm gonna do it. Now, what is our relationship to Akado Armory? They did send us their package of 4 swords and some gambesons that they made specifically for us to test, free of charge, but we do have to return these, so we are not going to be biased in terms of how well they do. They did give us a disclaimer that these are their initial prototypes. They haven't been released yet, and they said that their final model are going to be using a slightly harder steel. So they warned us that if we do see some deformation today, that the final models may not behave this way, but we are going to do a little bit of light torture testing today on steel and see how well they hold up. What you get when you buy an Akado Armory Sparring Katana is you get something that looks just like a cutting blade, a shinken, or even an Iaito, a training blade, right? So the sword comes with the scabbard, and this one is on their premium model. If you look, it has a beautiful wood pattern, and the sword itself is similar to the HEMA style swords where they flex. And if you guys didn't know, traditional Japanese swords do not flex. They're very stiff, very broad, thick blades. This one has flex. I would say that it's not as flexible as my HEMA counterparts, but the blade is dull enough at the end that I don't think we're gonna have any problems with thrusting. But this sword feels just like a real Japanese sword. It doesn't feel like a fetter that's shaped like a katana. And they did that on purpose. And the biggest difference between this sword and other steel katana fetters that are out there is this sword has the correct geometry and shape of a katana. It's triangular and not just this flat piece of steel that, again, feels like a long sword in katana form. You can tell that the katana that they made is also put together pretty much like a real one. It has 2 pegs right there, and I can't tell if this is real stingray skin, but it does feel like it. It has a handguard, a tsuba, and the seppa rings and everything that a real katana has, but it's meant for sparring. I think that's pretty incredible, and there is no other company currently that makes a sword quite like this. I really like the balance and the feel of the sword. I can draw extremely quick with it, and honestly, resheathing feels exactly like using my Shinken and my Iaito. I've tested them back to back, and honestly, I can't really tell the difference. Drawing in the different ways that I've been trained to draw, you can use this one-handed. I wouldn't say that the sword is meant for that, but the sword is balanced enough that it's not hurting my shoulders or my arms to use it one-handed. I think that the maneuverability of this sword is extremely fast. It's very, very fast in the hands. And again, this is a sparring sword. It's meant to be able to fight with and not hurt your opponents. So I think so far, this thing's pretty incredible. Another thing that these swords can do that normal Japanese bokken, shinai, and even Iaito can't do safely is practicing and sparring in the draw. Now we're just gonna simulate some right now because we're not wearing full gear. We can actually practice this safely while in full gear and do it at full speed. So the same thing, I'm coming in, we wait, and I draw. I can practice that much safer than, of course, with an Iaito, which has a sharp tip, doesn't flex, and I definitely can't do that with a bokken that doesn't have a saya, and definitely not a shinai, which is huge and round, not designed for draw cuts. So Ron can do the same thing. He has his hand up, and we're gonna go very slow, and he decides to draw, and we can decide in that moment how best to block these draw cuts. We can also practice scenario training if we were walking past each other, for example. So we're theoretically two samurai who are just gonna walk past each other, and I decide to cut then. We can safely do that with these swords, whereas an Iaito would be too dangerous or you would damage your blade. A shinai, you can't get a saya for. It doesn't work real well. And a bokken, same thing. It's very dangerous to hit somebody in the head with that, even when they're wearing a helmet. So with full protective gear, you can actually practice Battojutsu pretty safely. Now, Akado Armory is prepared to offer multiple packages for swords. This katana is their premium model, so it comes with the fully decorated saya and tsuba and everything, all the bells and whistles come with it. So their other offerings, if you can't afford the premium model, are gonna look like these. These come with the red wrap on the grip, and the sageo is going to have this kind of black and red mixture, but the blade is exactly the same. This is their Wakizashi model, so they're going to be offering different sizes as well. But if you buy a katana, it's going to look just like this. It's just going to be a little less fancy, but a little more affordable. Now, if you're into some more unique types of Japanese swords, they are also going to be offering this Nodachi. So if you don't know what a Nodachi is, it is a very long Japanese sword. It is about the same length as a longsword, a little longer in the handle, but about the same in blade length. And the fact that they sent us one of these to review as well is pretty crazy, because the katana is pretty exciting enough, but to have something like a Nodachi is truly special. So we're gonna actually spar with this later on and see how well it does. So we're gonna go ahead and test the Akado Armory katana on Evan here, who is wearing a full protective HEMA jacket and helmet. And we're gonna compare it to what it feels like when using this Techniques fetter from Purple Art Armory. So, Evan, so sorry you get to be my training dummy today.
It works.
We're gonna try thrusting first, because HEMA weapons typically have flex to them. That protects your opponent from having all of that force being thrusted through his jacket, right? So, Evan is not wearing a plastoid or anything like that underneath, or plastic guard. So he is gonna feel this no matter what, but we're gonna see which one feels different in terms of a slash, a stab, and a head strike. You ready, Evan?
Good.
So very first one. Is that manageable?
Very.
Okay, it's manageable and you can see it flexing, right? If I come in and do that, it's not gonna feel pleasant.
No.
How does it feel, Evan?
You definitely get hit, but it's not a pain.
Okay.
It is very manageable.
All right, let's try a strike to the head. Ready? That rung your bell, you're okay?
Yeah.
All right, one more time. Just remember what it feels like.
Yeah. Same feeling.
Okay, we're gonna just try a light arm strike to the, light shoulder strike.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, definitely feel like I hit my sword.
Okay. Not too bad?
Not too bad.
All right, so let's try the Akado Armory Katana, compare how it feels, Evan. So keep track of your pain index. Now, these swords I already know do not flex as much because they are wider, they're broader than the longsword.
Yeah,
manageable?
Manageable.
Okay, one more time.
Around the same.
Around the same, let's try it again on this side. Ready?
Definitely felt that one a little bit more.
Okay. A little more weight behind it, right? Okay, let's try a head strike.
Okay.
Ready? Was that more or less?
A little bit more.
A little.
I think it's because of how it's the construction, a little bit more forced and imparted.
Okay, ready? Clinch.
Okay, yeah, I definitely felt that one.
Okay, so Evan's feeling this a little bit more than he did with the longsword, and that's probably because this blade is wider up top and has more authority in the cut. You ready for the shoulder?
Go for it.
Okay.
Definitely felt that one a lot more than I did with the other. I think it's because it's a little bit wider on the edge.
Okay, one more time. Is it a lot more, or is it still manageable?
It's still manageable, but I think if we were sparring, it would be a lot quicker into a session.
Okay.
Just because of the force imparted.
Okay. So another thing that Akado Armory is going to be providing are rubber caps, just like in HEMA swords. They're large rubber sheaths that go over the tips, so that way you have even more surface area in the thrust. Good.
Good.
Ooh. Time. Get it? Great. Okay. All right, so we do see a little bit of deformation on the edge right there. These would have to be filed out. Ooh, that one's sharp. That one's pretty sharp right there, so we have to be really careful with that one. And in mine, actually doesn't look as bad, but yeah, I'm feeling some burrs right there that we're gonna have to file out. And they did say that these are softer steel, guys, so that's why we're seeing a little bit of deformation. However, Ron, check that sword in the sunlight. Do you see any bends, or does it look bent at all to you?
Nope. Straight as an arrow.
All right, mine too. This longsword has been used quite a bit, and I don't really have a lot of those same issues. You can see some dents, but we're not having any of the sharpness that I'm feeling on that right there. Okay, so I'm gonna bang on this longsword real quick. Yep, you're just gonna block. Just one cut. Ready? And go. Good. Let's see if we're seeing any cuts in the steel there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Oh, a little bit right there. Yeah, it's not that much. Getting a little bit of chewed up right there, but this looks okay. I'm not seeing any bends though. That's the big thing I'm looking for.
It's looking straight.
It's looking very straight. Let's try it with the messer. Good. Nice. Good. All right, guys, that about wraps up our review of the Akado Armory steel sparring katana. What do I think about it? Is it worth it? Are you worth it? Of course you are. You should definitely get one. I think that this is such an innovative step in the Japanese sword art arena. This replaces so many training tools that you would use as a Kenjutsu practitioner, somebody who practices Kendo or Iaito. You can do most of everything. Maybe not Kendo, but you can do everything else with this. And I really do think it's worth it. It held up to all the abuse we put it through, including banging on some heavy long swords, and to no ill effect. So as soon as Akado Armory drops this baby, you should go ahead and pick one up. Their link to the website is going to be in our description. So pick yours up as soon as they drop them. We'll catch you next time, guys. See ya. Squire, sword.